Welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. Man, it gets hot. They won't let us have Thanksgiving quietly without some crisis. But the president is tightening the screws on Kim Jong-un. He's calling the country a state sponsor of terrorism. It used to be on the list, see, and then George Bush took it off to try to make the North Koreans like us, but they don't like us, and they've kept on with their evil ways. And it looks like every time we lift something, it gets worse. But does it mean a whole lot more sanctions? Not really. As the Secretary of State said, it's more or less symbolic. But it is a symbol, and it'll mean tighter sanctions, but whatever. We've got the screws turned about as tight as they can go. Wendy?
And the Treasury Department will begin announcing new measures today as the president tries to stop the rogue regime from building deadly nuclear weapons. Charlene Aaron has the story.
The president made it clear that he believes more action needs to be taken against the rogue regime.
Today, the United States is designating North Korea as a state sponsor of terrorism. Should have happened a long time ago, should have happened years ago. In addition to threatening the world by nuclear devastation, North Korea has repeatedly supported acts of international terrorism, including assassinations on foreign soil.
President Trump announced the designation during a cabinet meeting at the White House Monday. He called it a long overdue step and part of the U.S. maximum pressure campaign against the North. And he says the move will impose further penalties on the country.
As we take this action today, our thoughts turn to Otto Warmbier, wonderful young man, and the countless others so brutally affected by the North Korean oppression. This designation will impose further sanctions and penalties on North Korea and related persons and supports our maximum pressure campaign to isolate the murderous regime that you've all been reading about and in some cases writing about. Tomorrow, the Treasury Department will be announcing an additional sanction and a very large one on North Korea, and this will be going on over the next 2 weeks. It'll be the highest level of sanctions by the time it's finished over a 2-week period.
The move returns North Korea to the list of countries the U.S. views as state sponsors of terror for the first time since 2008. Bruce Klinger, a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation in Washington and a former CIA deputy division chief for Korea, said the move designates North Korea for what it really is.
It officially reveals the nature of the regime. By not designating North Korea, it was really we were turning a blind eye to the nature of the regime, or we were not enforcing U.S. law.
Klinger agrees with the president that putting North Korea back on the list is a long overdue development. North Korea has repeatedly refused to enter diplomatic negotiations, and it now joins Iran, Sudan, and Syria on the U.S. terror blacklist. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Thanks, Charlene. Before we get into the other part of this news, I want to ask you, the big news that is not about North Korea, it's about sexual harassment. Roy Moore, and more recently, my friend Charlie Rose. Charlie started his career working for a law firm in Norfolk, Virginia. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
I think he graduated from Duke Law School, came up here, and then he went beyond it. But they've got all this sexual harassment stuff going on. What do you think about these charges? Every time you turn around, you pick up the paper and there's somebody else getting accused.
I think someone said it well on Twitter. The lights are on, Pat. The lights are on, you know. And there is a time in everyone's life where, you know, the lid comes off and you have to pay the piper.
Well, you know, we let Bill Clinton get away with, I mean, you talk about a harassment. He harassed everybody. His wife attacked those who came out against him, you know, Jennifer Flowers and Broderick and these others.
People are saying it was a different time, and for sure it was, but it still doesn't excuse not dealing with it. And apparently it's never too late, because a lot of these guys are much older now, and the accusations were from 20 years ago.
It's unbelievable. I mean, Roy Moore and, of course, the Weinsteins were just horrible.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm just shocked. Every time I turn around, there's somebody else getting unmasked. Is this the idea of these men in power are preying on vulnerable women? Is that what's happening?
You know, that's such a complex question, but I just think that there are times where God shines a light on a situation.
You think?
I just go back to this summer when evangelist Lou Engle said, "This is the year of the woman," and I think in some regards, God is it's payback time. And not that we, and sometimes it hurts. The truth can hurt sometimes.
Well, I guess it does hurt. All right, well, let's get back to the North Koreans. I don't think we've solved all our domestic problems yet, but it just goes on and on. I mean, you've got, Bill O'Reilly, you've got David Letterman, you've got these various ones that have been accused.
It seemed like it really started within Fox News, and then it sort of spread, and that sort of opened it, and now you've got lawmakers and other broadcasters.
Well, we had senators who were clearly guilty of all kinds of improprieties. And look at Ted Kennedy. He was supposedly an icon, and he had the morals of an alley cat, and.
Yeah, I think what's really upsetting is that a lot of times these men were in power. They were in positions where they could advance a young woman's career, and the women were in their 20s and early 30s and felt powerless. So that's what makes you upset, is when someone in power takes advantage of somebody, whether it's two men or a man and a woman or however that works. It's not right.
Okay, well, thanks.
Yes.
Well, stay tuned. We've got Greta Van Susteren, by the way. He's going to be talking about Twitter and all the other social media. She might have some insights on it. Well, our national security correspondent, Eric Rosales, is with us now from Washington. And, Eric, these sanctions, what kind of sanctions will we now impose on North Korea?
Yeah, exactly, Pat. Speaking of payback time, now's the time that Pyongyang is getting some payback. President Trump, as he mentioned, he wants these international sanctions to put maximum pressure on Pyongyang and pretty much isolate them internationally. These sanctions, they would prevent the ability for the country to receive U.S. foreign assistance, and also puts a ban on defense exports and sales, and allows the United States to punish countries that do any sort of business with Pyongyang. As we know, going after the international banks, and specifically the Chinese banks, is what's important.
Well, now, North Korea has been using Chinese banks as a gateway to the world financial system. Will the Chinese cooperate, do you think?
Yes, as of right now, we are hearing that China is going to be cooperating, because if not, they are going to be losing billions of dollars. We are talking about, China actually trades with North Korea. About 90% of the goods come from China for North Korea. So that is definitely big news for North Korea. And it's what they want to be able to do is just go after these banks and have them prevent them from being able to do business with North Korea, and basically suffocate the country from the inside out, where maybe either a coup will happen with the people, or Kim Jong-un will come to his senses and decide to come to the table.
Well, Secretary Tillerson says that we still hope for diplomacy. Now, you talked to Secretary Mattis last week. Is that the plan, do you think, for the administration?
Yes, as of right now, according to Secretary Mattis, we were on the plane with him on the way to NORAD, Colorado Springs. We had a upfront conversation with him face to face, and he basically told me that, yes, as of right now, diplomacy is still the #1 action, but we are ready to fight tonight. Our troops are ready. We have a number of ships, Navy ships, that are in and around the Korean Peninsula that we can be able to fire upon. And, of course, we have our bases out there in Guam, the B bombers that are ready as well. But he did invite Kim Jong-un to the table, which is interesting. He actually told us that he would invite Kim Jong-un to the table and set up that meeting if, in fact, Kim Jong-un would stop his development of military missiles and anything that has to do with any nuclear sort of power as well. So that was big news coming from the Secretary on this recent trip to NORAD.
Well, now, Secretary Tillerson said the U.S. doesn't want regime change, but if we take action, we certainly would want to do just that, wouldn't we?
Well, you would think that we would want to eventually, but, the biggest thing right now is we want diplomacy. The last thing that the United States wants to do is get into another war. But at the same time, we are ready to fight if, in fact, we get pushed into that direction.
Thanks, Eric. Keep us informed. God bless you.
Will do, sir. Thank you.
Well, in other news, another famous public figure has been caught in this sexual harassment scandal, sweeping the political and entertainment worlds. Now, we've been talking about it at the beginning of the show. John Jessup has a detail.
Well, thanks, Pat. Journalist Charlie Rose is the latest famous person to be accused of sexual misconduct. The Washington Post reports 8 women have come forward alleging he groped them and committed other lewd behavior. The 75-year-old journalist is one of 3 hosts of CBS This Morning and also a contributor to 60 Minutes. PBS says it will immediately stop the distribution of Charlie Rose's interview program, and CBS is also suspending him. Rose told the Post he was, quote, deeply embarrassed and apologized for his behavior. And on Capitol Hill, a former staffer says she was harassed by Michigan Congressman John Conyers, a Democrat and the longest-serving member of the House of Representatives. BuzzFeed reports Conyers settled a wrongful dismissal complaint with a woman in 2015, and she said she was fired because she wouldn't comply with his sexual advances. Well, in health news, sugar can appear in more than just sweet foods and drinks. The sugar in carbs like pasta can also be addictive for people who are sensitive to sugar. The director for the U.S. Center for Sports Medicine told Tribune Media Services he believes sugar in and of itself is one of the worst foods you can eat. The American Medical Association reported sugar companies paid researchers in the 1960s and 70s to downplay the harmful effects sugar can have on health. So low fat became the craze with sugar-based additives in most foods. Now many people are addicted to sweets, but too much sugar can lead to terrible diseases like obesity, diabetes, strokes, heart disease, and more. Pat, we're preaching to the choir here.
Well, you are preaching to the choir, and we've been talking about sugar, and Wendy, I know, is sensitive to all this, but white flour, translates into sugar in your system. Pasta will translate into sugar in your system. And so it is the white flour, along with the other type of processed food, and almost everything has sugar in it, some form. And the biggest offender, in my opinion, is high fructose corn syrup. It is in almost everything, and it's deadly.
It is terrible, but we're going into the holiday season with cookies, cakes, and
we will
pies.
not have pumpkin pie. We will not have sweet potato pie. We will not have...
You won't be at my house then.
Well, we're getting ready to do some cranberries. We don't just buy those cans of cranberries. We put the cranberries in water and cook them, and then you put a lot of sugar with them.
I love cranberries.
Yeah.
The ones you get, not the can, not the jelly.
Yeah, but the ones you make yourself.
Yeah, and you do have to put quite a bit, but you don't have to put that. I like them tart. You don't like them tart?
Well, I like them tart, but nevertheless,
you still have to put a cup of sugar in.
And sweet potato pie, all that's got sugar in it. Oh, it's Thanksgiving. We can't eat sweets. All right. Exercise restraint. Wendy will give you an example of how she does it.
You just cut the sugar in half.
Okay, thank you.
Or a little bit.